already starting to see people argue that we now have Peronism on the Potomac.
There's one thing in particular that I read that I really, really enjoyed, which is your recent piece, Is America Becoming Latin America? You argued that some of the same populist economic experiments that once set Latin America back are now being replayed here in DC.
This is a bit of uncharted territory. I'm not sure how many people actually read what you write, but and the general point was, Latin America has pursued a path for many years, more or less, right, with some alterations, and each country is different, of course. But broadly speaking, strong executive with fairly aggressive government engagement in the economy, with until relatively recently closed economies and the idea of import substitution. And I hasten to say that those policies, broadly speaking, have been left by the wayside, at least economically, because they proved to be ineffective, but they linger, the effects linger, and Latin America's slow growth profile continues to haunt the region. And we've talked about lost decades for Latin America in the past. Well, that's not just the past, right? It's like William Faulkner, the past isn't past, it's here with us still, right? And so we're talking about another lost decade for Latin America. That's the backdrop that I argue that from the US perspective, we're raising tariff barriers, we're engaging directly in the economy with government stakes and Intel and other potential US companies. Certainly we have a strong executive, which is claiming authorities that we haven't seen an executive claim in the past to do some of these things, most notably the emergency powers under IEPA, which is an Emergency Powers Act for economic emergencies, and a Congress that is really saying, for the most part, we agree with your direction. And so you have a strengthening executive in a way that I think institutionally we haven't seen in the United States, at least in my memory. So the challenge here is, where do we go? What are the broader implications of this? But you're already starting to see people argue that we now have Peronism on the Potomac. And that's, and I directly compare it to where we could be going with Peronism. So that's something we have to watch closely, I think.
Yeah, Melania as Eva Trump, Eva Peron.